Sometimes the ends justify the means, no matter the cost to your soul. That's a lesson to be learned from the soldier of the future known as Cable, and his geek history lesson is now in session. Hello and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I'm Jason Cable Through Time Inman.
I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson. Welcome to your Mind University, because you have stumbled onto the podcast where we take one character, construct, or a secret son from popular culture and teach you everything you need to know about them in about an hour.
I call him a secret son. That's a good way to describe him.
And today we're talking about one of Professor Jason's all-time favorite characters. This has been a long time coming. I know jack nothing about him. I'm super excited. Today, who are we talking about and why, Jason?
We're talking about Cable. That's the infamous Cable from X-Force.
Did you make that up, or is that an actual theme?
That was a theme we came up with, I think, a long time ago in the Deadpool episode.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, like we've had the X-Force theme around for a long time. We just haven't done themes lately.
Oh, we gotta bust that one out. We gotta make that the new West Coast
X-Force. It's so 90s it hurts.
Let's see how people try to spell that on Twitter. Yeah, because he's in the new Deadpool movie, which is maybe a good reason to go see the new Deadpool movie.
In honor of Deadpool 2, basically, which is going to be the first live-action appearance of Cable, as played by Josh Brolin.
As played by Thanos.
It's time to talk about Cable. Now, this lesson is actually suggested by some awesome listeners of the show.
Ooh, like who?
At Flash Spider-Man, Steve Irby, our friend Cameron at Smoothie Gamer from New Brunswick.
Love him.
And comic book creator Patrick Zurcher even requested this episode from us. So he draws Action Comics, and he's a great guy on Twitter.
Worked on Cable.
That's right. Let's move straight into the 10-cent origin,
which is the first
of Cable.
Yep. The first part of the podcast where Professor Jason is going to break down all the basic who, what, where, and mostly whens of this character. And in case you ever go to a dope Deadpool-themed cocktail party and someone's like, hey, what's the difference between Cable and Colossus? So go.
But who would make that statement?
Well, because they're both big. They're both big guys.
A lot of characters are big.
I don't know, okay? It was a bad joke.
First off, I just want to say there aren't going to be a lot of wins because this is comic book timeline history, and those don't exist.
Well, he's a time traveler,
Yep.
so...
Of course, is published by Marvel Comics. His first appearance as Nathan Summers was in the Uncanny X-Men number 201 in January of 1986. His first appearance as Cable was in the New Mutants number 87 in March of 1990, 4 years later. He was created, Nathan Summers was created by Chris Claremont. Cable was created by Louise Simonson and Rob Liefeld.
No way!
Yep.
I didn't know that.
His alter ego is Nathan Christopher Charles Summers.
Too many names.
He, of course, is a mutant. His team affiliations have been the X-Men, the X-Force, the Ascani, the Six-Pack, the 12, the New Mutants, the Avengers Unity Division, and the Underground.
Important question. The Six-Pack?
The Six-Pack, yep.
Awesome.
We'll get to them.
Okay.
His partnerships have been with Domino, who's in the upcoming movie, Rachel Summers, Deadpool, and Hope Summers. His notable aliases have been Nathan Winters, Nathan Dayspring, Ascani Sun, Soldier X, Chosen One, and Traveler. And his abilities include telepathy, telekinesis, technopathy. He's an expert marksman and hand-to-hand combatant. He has a cybernetically enhanced arm, and also he is a very advanced strategic military leader.
What if Winter Soldier but psychic?
Yes, exactly. Just to let you know, in terms of his powers, Cable is an alpha level mutant, later identified as an omega level mutant, which means that he is super, super powerful.
Yeah.
But he's not as powerful as he could be, which is what we'll learn about a little bit later. Even though his left eye glows, this is actually an effect related to his mutant powers, and it has been theorized that this is a vestigial offshoot of his father's genes.
Oh, I was like, that's lame. But then the minute you brought that in, I was like, that's not lame anymore.
Because the same trait can also be seen in his uncle Vulcan and in his alternate reality counterpart, Nathaniel Gray.
Oh, that's cool.
So there you go. So Cable already has a little bit of a tie to his daddy.
Aw, that's cool. I like that.
Hey, super friends, I want to tell you about a company called HelloFresh. Don't know if you know about them, but they're a meal kit delivery service that shops, plans, and delivers step-by-step recipes at your front door. Now, the greatest thing about HelloFresh is that they have some amazing selection. There's 3 plans to choose from. You have the classic, you have the veggie, you have the family, and it helps you rediscover the excitement of cooking. I don't know if you know that because, not a lot of people enjoy having to plan dinner, spending money on takeout every single night. I don't know. I don't. And this HelloFresh service is perfect. It's simple. It's convenient. All the ingredients are pre-measured in handy-dandy labeled meal kits, so you know which ingredients go with what recipe, because I sometimes screw up peppers and things. I put too many peppers in too many meals. I like peppers, but sometimes I like to put peppers in too many things, and HelloFresh stops me from putting peppers in a lot of stuff. So there's a benefit of subscribing to this box because, you get to spend less time meal planning, less time shopping. You get to just cook your food and cook having delicious, delicious food. I recently had the maple glazed pork chops from HelloFresh, and my friends, let me tell you, they were some of the best pork chops I've ever eaten. I didn't know maple needed to be on top of a pork chop. That was a lesson that I learned thanks to HelloFresh. And I want to tell you about, for our listeners, you can get $30 off your first week of HelloFresh. All you got to do is visit HelloFresh.com/GeekHistory30 and enter the promo code GeekHistory30. All you got to do is go to HelloFresh.com/GeekHistory30 and use the promo code GeekHistory30. Get on this, super friends. Get delicious filling meals delivered right to your door every single week. Put that food right in your mouth, straight from the delicious company, HelloFresh. Next, let's move into the meet cute for Cable. Ashley, what's the meet cute?
The meet cute is a term that we stole from romantic comedy writing, where we tell you where we first meted the characters and how cute it was. Jason, you love Cable.
I do.
Where did you first meet his glowing eye across the room and knew that you were going to be bound together eternally?
I met Cable when he wasn't Cable.
What?
I met Cable in a storyline called The Age of Apocalypse.
Oh, that old nugget.
Now, this was a storyline where, of course, time was broken and we were in an alternate timeline where Apocalypse had taken over everything. And the X-Men titles did something that was so cool. We talked about it several times. I could do a whole podcast with The Age of Apocalypse. It'd be amazing.
I think we have some requests for it. I'm not going to lie.
All the titles were renamed. Mm-hmm. So Uncanny X-Men became like the Astonishing X-Men. X Factor became Factor X. Generation X.
The rename that everyone was asking
Generation
for.
X became Generation...
X Generation?
No, it became Generation Next.
Oh.
And then Cable became X-Man.
Satellite.
No, X-Man. That was my first introduction to this character, because in this universe, they Mr. Sinister created a Cable-type clone, which was the child of Jean Grey and Scott Summers. Mm. But in this version, he's a teen. He's 18. He's young, which we had never seen Cable at this age at this point. Also, Cable has a debilitating disease that we're going to talk about that doesn't allow him to access his full powers. X-Man, otherwise known as Nate Gray, could access his full powers. This series is written by Jeff Loeb and Steve Skroce, or Skroce. I don't know how you say his last name. It's Skorce. He also storyboarded The Matrix, if you didn't know. Fun fact.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, but he's a big comic artist. So that was the first time that I met Cable. And actually, X-Man was so popular that they kept him in the regular Marvel universe. So then there was a Cable, and then there was X-Man.
Is X-Man the one that you have an action figure of?
I do. I do have an action figure of X-Man.
The only action figure they made of him?
So because I was so interested in X-Man, I went backwards on Cable, and I sort of learned to love them both. I think I like Cable a little bit more just because there's more. I think the idea of the old man lost through time is a little bit more interesting, but I do have a very special place in my heart for X-Man Nate Gray.
Cool.
So that's why I have an action figure. They've only made one action figure of him, and yeah. So I don't own any action figures of Cable because I am very picky about Cable's costume.
You are. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah. Sometimes they put too many shoulder pads on Cable, and I'm like, no.
Look, he was created in 1990.
Ashley, where did you first meet Cable?
I first met Cable in a really weird pamphlet that I got from a comic book store that I am convinced Marvel didn't publish, but I don't have it anymore. I got it in the mid mid-late 90s, probably about 97, 98. And
they're like, hello, young little girl. Have you heard the word of cable?
It was exactly like that. They had glowing eyes. It was very strange.
Come to the Church of Ascona.
They had ties. It was nice. And it was on the counter, and it was like a breakdown of all the X-Men and their sort of family trees and like, kind of like what we do here, who, what, where kind of thing.
Cool.
And for Scott and Jean, it had all of their children as they existed.
And alternate children?
Up to that point. Yeah.
That would be a long list.
He was in there. Or, I mean, the main ones, I'm sure. Not all of them, because, they have a lot of
fake
dead babies through time. And Cable was in there, and I was like, great.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew about Cable for a long, long time before I ever read him. I don't think he appeared in X-Men the Animated Series.
He does.
Oh, does he? Well, I've not seen that episode,
he does.
so it doesn't count.
I actually thought that was what you were going to say. He does appear in X-Men the Animated Series.
Oh, no, but not till later, right?
No, he's in the original 1990s, early one. Yeah.
But not the first season.
Well, I don't know what season he's in. I don't know.
No, but that's like my first memory is that pamphlet. I used to like to trot out for people when we talk about X-Men that I could name all the children because they never appear anywhere else really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the first time I ever met Cable, and he was Cable. Then he wasn't X-Man. He wasn't cute. He was a weird old man.
He's much cuter as Cable.
He is because he kind of looks like Cyclops.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Cool.
All right, let's move into the History 101, which is the main meat of the lesson, where Professor Jason is going to break down Cable for us.
Okay, so Ashley, I know you don't know that much about Cable.
I don't.
I know you're probably not a fan of Cable because he comes from the gritty 90s.
I'm not a fan.
X-Force.
I'm not a fan of Cable, but he was just never a character that captured my interest.
Okay. First off, if you know anything about our X-Men lessons, you know that it's going to get super complicated.
So take notes.
There's a lot of parts where this might not make sense. Just go with it. First, let's talk about some publication history.
Woo.
Now, the character of Cable was created by Rob Liefeld and was sort of framed by writers Louise Simonson and Fabian Nieza. I hope I'm saying his last name right. He's a great writer. They patterned the character after Liefeld's plots. It wasn't until much later that Nathan Christopher Charles Summers, infant son of Cyclops, and the mercenary time travel from the future known as Cable were linked as the same individual. Liefeld actually chose the name Cable for the character, and he explains the creation of the character as so, and I quote, I was given a direction to create a new leader for the New Mutants. There was no name, no description besides a man of action, a.k.a. the opposite of Xavier. I created the name, the look, and much of the history of the character, and I named him Cable, although Bob Harris suggested Quinn and Louise Simonson suggested Commander X. Now, Bob Harris, who was the editor-in-chief of at the time, and writer-artist Jim Lee and Will Spertasio, who were writing the X-Men spin-offs X Factor that starred Cyclops and the other four original X-Men, decided that Nathan would be sent in the future and grow up to become Cable. Now, Liefeld, who conceived of Cable and his archenemy Strife were one and the same, actually disliked this idea of linking the child of Cyclops to Cable, but it happened anyway.
They did the correct thing.
That's what I say. And now to comics history.
Yay!
Now, actually, in case you didn't know, Nathan Christopher Charles Summers' destiny. Christopher is Scott Summers' dad, and Charles for Charles Xavier.
Yes.
So there you go, just in case you don't know the name.
Bio dad and then actual dad.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Bald dad, bio dad. So his destiny was planned before his parents ever met. Geneticist Mr. Sinister, who works for Apocalypse and is the shapeshifty guy with the blue and red cape, found that a union between the X-Men Scott Summers Cyclops and Jean Grey Marvel Girl would produce a powerfully genetic mutant, possibly the most powerful mutant of all time. Sinister hoped that he could create this mutant and use it to control and defeat his mortal adversary, Apocalypse. Now, Ashley, really quickly, just in case anybody doesn't know, who's Apocalypse?
Apocalypse is the very first mutant who, through complicated circumstances, ascends to godlike status. He first cropped up in ancient Egypt, and he was real purple in a movie once.
Yep, and he's all about the survival of the fittest and ruling the world.
Yeah, he's very... I'm not going to make that analogy, never mind.
Were you going to compare to a very famous world leader that conquered most of Europe?
I was.
Okay. We all know who that is. He who must not be mustached.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Around this time, Jean Grey's form and consciousness was replaced by the reckless cosmic entity, the Phoenix Force.
She didn't get a dope costume, though.
Yep, her best costume. And then she was healed from radiation poison in a cocoon at the bottom of Jamaica Bay. Now, Sinister, because, his baby mama was dead, created a clone. It's serious.
I'm sorry, that's just so funny.
Sinister created a clone of Jean and named her Madeline Pryor. Now, Sinister's plan was to produce the child he needed to from the union of Madeline and Scott. It worked. They boned, and baby Nathan was born.
You're just killing it today.
Yep. So soon, Jean Grey comes back. Scott leaves Madeline. Madeline becomes a crazy goblin queen with demon powers. Tries to kill baby Nathan. But baby Nathan is rescued by Scott and Jean Grey. Comics!
Yay!
If you want any more details on that, you can listen to it more. We did very much in detail in the Cyclops Geek History lesson, which you can find through Google.
I think, do we have a Jean Grey lesson too?
I don't remember. We have 210 lessons. We have so many.
I think we have a Jean Grey lesson too.
So Scott,
Google it and confirm.
Scott and Jean care for baby Nathan now.
Yay!
And Apocalypse has learned of Sinister's plan at this point.
Boo.
And he abducts baby Nathan and infects him with a deadly techno-organic virus because Apocalypse is based on the Inhumans lunar base before X-Factor can save the baby. Now, I'm going to tell you what this techno-organic virus is. I'm only going to mention it once, but it's very important to Cable. It frames a lot of who he is as a character. Now, this virus is used by the members of a group called the Technarchy to turn other beings into techno-organic beings. Basically, think pure cyborgs. Like half your body is metal, half your body is flesh, okay?
Oh, like cyborg.
Yes. The Technarchy can then feed upon the infected beings and then drain their energy. Once the energy has been drained, all that remains of their prey are brittle statues. And if the infected creature is not drained of its energy, it becomes what I like to call a phalanx.
Oh,
or how do you actually call it?
Phalanx.
Phalanx, yes.
Fun fact, we have a Jean Grey Geekus lesson. We also have an Apocalypse one.
I knew we had an Apocalypse one.
So there you go. Yeah. So if you do need some, if you do need to do some extra research, we got your backs.
So there is a tie to the, I like to call them the phalanx.
The phalanx.
I call them that because when I read that book back all the way to the back of the day, that's how I thought you pronounced it.
It's a difficult word, yeah.
Now, this disease, the techno-organic virus, was believed to have been found by Apocalypse on a celestial ship. That's a part of the origin of Apocalypse. When he was back in ancient Egypt, he found a celestial ship. It kind of let him be super powerful. Remember that.
Got
this
it.
Virus was supposedly found by Apocalypse on his celestial ship. This will come back into play.
Got it.
Remember, we're talking about a time traveler here.
Oh, boy.
So that is the techno-organic virus. So Nathan is now infected with this virus that is basically going to turn him into a piece of metal.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
The Ascani, or Ascani, I've never heard this said out loud, so I don't know. So I'm just going to say
whatever you say is right.
Yep. They are a sisterhood in the future that fights against Apocalypse. They're called the Ascona Clan. They appear and they tell Cyclops that Nathan will die from the techno-organic virus unless she takes him 2,000 years into the future where there are cures or medicines that can stop it. Cyclops has no choice but to agree and allows his son to be sent to the future with X-Factor's sentient computer ship watching over him. Now, Ashley, if this was the end of Nathan Summers' story and this character had not been tied to Cable, do you think comic writers, X-Men writers would have brought this kid back somehow anyway? Or do you think this kid's story would have just ended there?
I think they probably would have just replaced him with another Summers child because Rachel and Hope kind of...
Well, Rachel Summers, let's explain, is the daughter of Jean Grey and Scott Summers from a weird alternate reality. Now, here's the fun fact. The sisterhood of the Ascona Clan that just showed up, that's Rachel Summers.
I know. Yeah. But so she existed, and then, like, they kind of replaced her with Hope, and then they were both at the school for a while. So I truly think that they would have just made another son, and then someone would have remembered about Nate, and he would have showed up eventually. He wouldn't be as important. I think these two characters being tied together is good for both their legacy because, frankly, Cable's a dumb name.
I like Cable.
It follows the 90s trends of dumb names for superheroes.
Do you know why it is? I didn't explain. The original idea of the name is that he's a cable through time.
It's slightly less dumb.
Yeah.
But it's still a dumb name. You might as well call him, I don't know, Ratchet, which I'm sure is the name of some kind of hero.
I like Cable.
I know you do. But he would have gone the way... He would have gone the way. It would have been like topless, covered in grease with some coveralls and goggles on top of his head.
But do you?
I think he would have gone away and been like, because there were a lot of new X-Men characters that cropped up.
Or the Nathan
Cable.
Son. Okay.
Cable would have. They both would have gone away.
I don't know. Deadpool's still around though.
But he's the one.
I mean, Domino's still around. Shatterstar's still around.
But did anyone know who Domino was before they put her in a Deadpool movie?
Yeah. Yeah, I think,
but she's not significant on the level that Deadpool is, and I think that's what Cable would have been relegated to. Cable's only important
because he's
Nate, because he's Nate, and Nate is only important because he grows up to become Cable.
Yeah,
they're both better for being attached to each other.
I agree with you. I think it is the better choice to tie them. I just thought it'd be fun to take an alternate rabbit hole down X-Men history.
Yeah.
All right, now, so the leader of the Ascona Clan, known as Mother Ascani, turns out to be a time-displaced Rachel Summers.
It's all right. Cut to the chase.
Who is Scott and Jean's daughter from another reality. Now, Nate is cloned in this future. In case he doesn't survive the Ascani's treatment for the virus. However, the Ascani are attacked by these loyal to Apocalypse who take the clone because they believe it to be the real Nate. And Apocalypse raises the infant as his heir, and future vessel, and dubs him Strife, the Chaos Bringer.
Yeah, Strife.
Yes. Now, despite the doubts, Nathan survives his TechnoOrganic infection, and he's raised for a short time by Rachel. Although this leads to Nathan sort of always having this virus, but he learns to control it. Soon, Nathan is attacked, and he is saved by his father, Cyclops, and Jean Grey, his sort of genetic mother.
Yeah, his bio mom.
We find out that Mother Ascani and Rachel are able to bring the psyches of the honeymooning Scott and Jean into the future to raise and protect Nathan during a particularly violent time. Nathan is then raised by his adoptive parents, who he calls Slim and Red, and they present themselves to the world as the Dayspring family. Now, Nathan has no idea that Slim bears the psychic imprint of his natural father, nor that any of them are mutants, and Nathan stays with Slim and Red for 12 years. Now, this is one of my, I'll talk about this more, this is in this miniseries called The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix. This is one of my favorite X-Men stories because...
I think you mentioned that the last time we brought it up in a lesson.
Because... Cyclops gets to raise his son in this story, which I think, and Jean actually, even though Nate is not really her kid, Nate sort of is her kid.
At least the kid of her clone,
yeah. The kid of her clone. And Jean actually does become his mom. Like Jean effectually, like there's a moment in the series when Jean and Scott have to return back to time, and Jean actually says, "Come here, Nathan, let me hug you one last time." Aww. And you're just like, oh, God.
I like this story as well because it's one of the only times you see Scott and Jean as a
parents?
functional couple and not as like deadbeat. They're terrible parents most of the time.
Cyclops is a terrible parent. Yeah. This is also one of the few times we actually see Cable not as an old man.
Oh, BB Cable.
So he's about like 14 or 15 in this. He's pretty young. He's a cute little Cable.
Cute little Cable.
Now, soon puberty strikes and Nathan's body turns against him. He
gets real ugly for like 2 years and then it all works out okay.
No, he's nearly dies because of the TechnoOrganic Virus.
No, that's much worse.
Yeah. He's pep talked back to life by Rachel on the astral plane because, Nathan being a psychic, he can go to the astral plane. Nathan recovers and alerts Slim that Red is in trouble. They rush to find Red is at the mercy of Apocalypse, who is about to bond with Strife's body. Now, Nathan disrupts the bond, which ultimately kills Apocalypse, and with Apocalypse no longer a threat, Rachel makes Slim and Red return to their bodies in the present, and Nathan is left by himself.
Oh, baby.
Now, Nathan grows up, and he basically wars and fights Strife, his clone, over and over and over again. And Strife begins to wear his big ceremonial armor and mask, so no one actually knows that he's actually Cable. Cable eventually meets his friend Blacksmith, who is a member of Clan Ascani, and he falls in love with a woman named Aaliyah, who saves him from death. Now, Nathan falls in love with Aaliyah, and the two marry. And Aaliyah takes the clan name of Jen Scott as a tribute to Jean and Scott, the parents of the Ascani son, who is Cable.
That's cool.
Now, along this, Nathan becomes a huge military leader, and he takes control of the clan chosen, and he continues to follow the way of the Ascani. And just to let you know, the Ascani beliefs taught Nathan basically who and what he is. It basically says that fate must be embraced, You thanks for today, you please for tomorrow. And they preach of a sacred timeline that should be preserved and nurtured through careful time travel. The Ascani also have a ceremonial language. They have unique martial arts, and they have a weapon called the scimitar, which focuses psionic energy, which we'll talk about briefly later on.
Okay.
Now, these Ascani believers deified the ancient X-Men. The Xavier was their father figure. The Bright Lady was a mother goddess. And the prophesized Dayspring or Ascani sun is their messiah. The Ascani took as their symbols the phoenix and the scarred eye. And now the scarred eye is reminiscent of the scars that are around Cable, the Ascani son's right eye. That's where he gets those scars. And they, of course, like I said, battle the scions of the High Lord led by Strife. Now, during the war between these opposing forces, Nathan and Strife clashed repeatedly, becoming bitter enemies, even though Nathan, again, was completely unaware that Strife is him. Eventually, Nathan tires of the future fight, and Nathan decides to defy his Ascani training and says, I'm just going to kill Apocalypse before he comes into power. Using time travel technology, Nathan travels to ancient Egypt shortly after In-Saba-Nur, who is the original name of Apocalypse, found the celestial ship. And he battles In-Saba-Nur and his original Dark Riders with a sword and a shield, and he calls himself the Traveler. Now, we have talked about this before in the Apocalypse lesson before, that this man called the Traveler started attacking Apocalypse and was able to defeat him over and over and over again. During one battle with Nur severed the Traveler's left cybernetic arm, and during the confusion, the Traveler pulled a gun and shot Apocalypse in the head. After reattaching his techno-organic arm, the Traveler was accepted as the new leader of the Dark Riders because he took out their survival of the fittest, but he declined. The Traveler turned to Ozymandias, who is Nur's servant, and instructed him to remember that there will always be someone smarter and stronger around, and that being fit to survive means to have the responsibility to help those who are not. Unaware to the Traveler, his techno-organic infected blood mixed with Nur's as he wiped Nur's blood on Ozymandias. Now, remember what I said, that Apocalypse found the techno-organic virus on his ship?
God damn it. Way to be a paradox.
Self-fulfilling paradox. Yep. Yeah. So
Nate, this is your mom.
Yeah.
I'm really disappointed in you right now. I'm not mad, but I'm disappointed.
I fought for years. And this is how you reward me?
Well, if you go stand in the corner and think about what you did, maybe I'll let you play with Rachel after.
I've seen so much death. So much death. I've seen a dog.
It's supposed to be quiet while you're in the corner.
I've seen a dog pick up his paw after it was blown off by an apocalyptic soldier.
Nate, have you been picking on dogs again?
I've seen a kid get his lollipop blown up. I've seen so much death, so much suffering. That's why I grit all the time. That's why I grr all the time.
Yeah, we've paid for a lot of expensive dental work for you, so I'm gonna need you to relax your jaw a little.
Oh my god. So much death.
Who's your god again?
Xavier.
Oh, okay.
So much death. Patrick Stewart.
He's my god, that's for sure.
All right, cool. Let's move on. Yeah. Nathan eventually returns to the future, and his wife, Jen Scott, gives birth to her son, Tyler Dayspring. Now, we're not going to really talk about Tyler that a lot. I will say that Tyler also comes back to modern day and sort of becomes a servant of Apocalypse and, gives Wolverine his adamantium back and does stuff like that. He's a villain called Genesis, but I don't really like talking about him that much, so we're not.
Well, Tyler is a name that means gatekeeper, so he should have kept the gate to the future closed.
Yep. Now, Tyler, as I said, he's born, he grows up, he gets introduced as the newest initiate into Strife's forces, having been mentally manipulated by the mutant called Frisco, not the the stuff you use to cook with.
Frisco? Crisco's what you used to cook.
Well, this is the future alternate.
Frisco is what some people call San Fran.
This is future Crisco. Frisco.
Okay. All right. Friskies buys Crisco. Yep. They become Frisco.
Tyler then puts Nathan in an impossible situation by mind linking with one of Nathan's teammates, Dawn Silk. Cable has to choose between the woman or his now demented son.
What are these ridiculous names? Dawn Silk.
The future. Seeing that Tyler is lost, he chooses his teammate and shoots Tyler, an action that will turn Tyler against him when the mind control is gone. And after many years and battles, Strife escapes into the past and Nate has to follow him. Now, Ashley, as we enter the man known as Cable and his adventures in the past or the modern day Marvel Universe,
yes.
What do you think about Cable's past or future? Any insights on this man that you have gained?
Insights?
Yeah, like on this man, like, I mean, basically his whole life is war. His whole life is fight, fight, fight.
I don't know. I think that's pretty tropey. What's more interesting to me, honestly, about him is his time with the Ascani and all of that implication, and the idea that it seems like he was raised by a bunch of nice hippies and then things didn't really work out for him, and I think that's really sad. I think he's a very tragic character.
He is a very tragic character, yes. So Cable's in the future now, or he's in the past.
He's in the future, Days of Future Past.
He's in the Days of Future Past,
He's in modern, for all intents and purposes, modern day.
Now, in order to understand the current era's threats and obtain money, Cable does what we would all do, and he formed a mercenary group.
Oh, great. I was like, robs a bank?
Pretty close. So just out there, if any of you are ever wondering, like, oh, man, I'm in a new time period, I don't know what to do, form a mercenary group.
Yeah.
It's the best thing to do.
You know, don't, like, play the stock market.
The group was initially called the Wild Pack, but after they learned that they got into some copyright infringement with Silver Sable, they renamed themselves to the Six Pack. And they began to sell Cable's advanced future weapons.
It's just like such a douchey name for a team.
Well, don't worry about it because soon they were all killed.
Great.
And only Cable survived.
Okay, good.
Having gone solo, Cable tracks Strife's group to the Freedom Force base. And he gets slagged and left behind, and he has to escape the Freedom Force cronies. It's not easy, but he does get to use Pyro's fire shooters at the Blob while almost decapitating Super Saber. Now, Cable thinks he gets clear of the Freedom Force until he gets cornered in New York City. And fortunately, some of the New Mutants happen by and help him fight off the government issue mutants.
Oh, right, because every Marvel character lives in New York.
Yes. Cable then accompanies the New Mutants to their school, which is the X-Mansion, and Moira McTaggart is there trying to get Wolfsbane to go back to Scotland with her. Cable steps in and requests that Wolfsbane stays. Moira agrees, but only because she knows that Cable will be an interesting influence for the kids and maybe push them outside of their boxes.
That's a terrible reason.
In the New Mutants, now in the team of the New Mutants, Cable sees a dual need. They need a mentor/teacher, and he needs recruits for his cause against Strife. So he becomes the leader of the New Mutants. Now, at this time, Cable is probably the worst choice to lead this team, and Moira McTaggart kind of goes down pretty easily with it. She's just like, it's whatever.
Yeah, it's an editorial mandate.
It's an editorial mandate. They New Mutants wasn't selling that well, and Cable actually made it one of the best selling titles in Marvel.
Cool.
So, that was the whole reason. Fun fact: in publishing history, it actually isn't until the events of the Extinction Agenda that Cable is officially labeled a mutant, and that his eye starts glowing. Yeah, until then he just sort of like they think he's a cyborg. And that's it.
Interesting.
So it's not until Extinction Agenda that he shows like his telepathic abilities and stuff like that.
They think he's a robot.
Soon after that, Cable meets a familiar ally in the X-Mansion. While looking at some new recruits, Deadpool shows up and states that Tolliver, an ally of Strife's, has put a hit on Cable's head. With some New Mutant teamwork and the timely arrival of Domino, Deadpool is subdued and mailed back to Tolliver in a box.
Great.
During this time, however, Richter leaves the team to search for Wolfsbane and Genosha, and Sunspot surely leaves as well, and the whole team kind of just, leaves them basically.
Falls apart.
Yeah, there's a whole new team. Now, Ashley, I'm going to ask you an idea. Do you like the idea of Cable and Deadpool sort of being linked together? Is this a good story idea, or do they kind of only do it because they're both Rob Liefeld 90s characters?
I don't like the idea of Deadpool being linked to any character or any comic books or
get beyond
existing.
That, and let's talk about Cable and Deadpool.
No, I think it's cheap. I said it before, I'll say it again. I don't like my X characters crossing over with any other characters.
Even X characters?
No, I mean, I like the X-Men should exist in a bubble.
Okay, but Cable and Deadpool are both X characters.
But Deadpool's not a mutant.
Yes, Deadpool is a mutant.
Oh, I didn't think Deadpool was a mutant.
Yeah, Deadpool's a mutant.
No, I hate Deadpool. I don't care. No, this was dumb.
Right, get beyond the idea of your hatred of Deadpool. I want to talk about the idea of pairing these two characters together because
they're both Rob Liefeld characters. I don't think that's a particularly good reason to...
But from a writer's standpoint, they don't really fit together. They don't really... That's what I'm asking you. Do you think that's the only reason they do it is because the Rob Liefeld...
Yes, and because they're both mercenary characters. And because someone had the joke to mail him in a box. I don't know. No, I think it's a terrible idea.
All right. Noted. Never ask Ashley anything about Deadpool ever again. All right, listeners, I think we all learned that lesson. All right. Now, Cable later plays the part of tough love parent and allows some of these core members of the New Mutants to leave while recruiting more obscure, more cutthroat members for his new team because this is the 90s.
Yeah.
And he gets Warpath, Domino, Shatterstar with the weird helmet, and Feral. And he decides to make a band of soldiers for a war that he fears is looming. And this leads to him creating, out of this new team, X-Force.
Jason's favorite.
No, it's not. I actually don't. My favorite X-Force lineup is the Pete Milligan lineup when they turn into X-Status. That's my favorite X-Force. Cable is a lone gun. I do not like Cable on a team.
Oh, interesting.
Nope, he is a lone gun. So the New Mutants lineup gets shaken up, and the team officially changes its moniker to X-Force. This incarnation first tries to take down the Mutant Liberation Front with little success. Cable's group does damage to a member or two, but Strife is able to get away again. And seeing a need for more teamwork, Cable leads a training session in which he lets Feral hide while the others seek. This actually ends up being a bad idea as Feral goes feral and rips right through Cannonball's stomach. And Cable has no recourse but to shoot Feral with a sedative and hope that Cannonball pulls through.
Wow, Jesus.
Which he eventually does.
So maybe not a great leader?
Yeah, not really in this much. I think this is like an idea of bad writing where they're just like, yeah, you're going to face the toughest opponent. Hope you live. And then when one of them actually gets killed, it's like, oh crap. Oh, God, I can't have you die.
Oh, Cable, come on.
No, Ashley, this is all during the very gritty 90s era of comics with grimaces and guns and shoulder pads and so much that they hurt. Why do you think, do you have any reasoning for why comics went so grim and gritty? And like I said, if there's any character...
I have a theory.
Cable's kind of the poster child for the 90s. He really is.
In many ways. So is Deadpool.
Yeah. But I guess it's Cable because of big gun and shoulder pads.
He is. He's the stereotype, I guess, for the 90s. I think that because really when you look at this shift begins in the mid-1980s.
It's probably maybe Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen. Yeah.
It solidifies in the it permeates all comics. And a lot of pop culture of the time, too. The 90s was a very extreme time. That's like the adjective that I like to look back on that decade with. For comics in particular, I think it's a direct reaction to the Silver Age and to the Comics Code Authority and to... Basically, the Comics Code only got lifted because a bunch of people said, screw it, we're not following it anymore.
But that didn't happen until the 2000s.
It didn't, but this, to me, is the push toward that. This is the... we spent decades and decades playing nicey-nicey. We got real silly in the Silver Age, and now, screw you, Mom and Dad, we're going to do what we want. That's. I really think that you can look directly to the Silver Age to see how we get to what the 90s are.
Oh, it's like an opposite response.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Do you have a theory?
No, I mean, my whole opinion would just be, it was basically Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen. Is kind of like... it's like
which are mean stories.
These lesser writers being like, we can do that, but let's do that in the regular books.
Yeah.
And then I kind of think that the grim 90s, like there is a comic book cover that to me encapsulates the 1990s more than any other comic book cover, and it's Spider-Man before the Clone Saga, and his mask is ripped off, and you can see his face, and he's grimacing. He's like,
yes, I know exactly what you mean.
And to me, that's the cover that encapsulates the grim and gritty 1990s because it's like Spider-Man's the happy-go-lucky character.
Yeah.
And
I can't tell you if Robin is smiling on a single 90s cover.
Tim Drake smiles on a couple covers. But it's more that I kind of I blame this gritty 1990s. It's like I think that's more what killed the comic book market in the 90s.
I agree.
It's because I think so many people were just like, this sucks. Everybody's just angry and like more guns.
It's a very and I love 90s comics. I love a lot of comics that came out of that era, but it is very masculine. And it can seem very not friendly. Because comics are mean.
Yep. All right, so we're going to get to an event now called Executioner's Song. Now, during this event, Strife, Remember him?
Yeah, evil Cable.
Yep. Posed as Cable.
We're supposed to forget him in the last 30 seconds.
He posed as Cable and publicly made an assassination attempt on Professor Charles Xavier. Now, Strife's bullet had infected Professor Xavier with the TechnoOrganic Virus.
Joke's on him. His dad's just going to kill him in like another decade or so.
Yep. Now, Strife also asked Mr. Sinister to kidnap Scott and Jean in exchange for the Summers family genetic material, because Mr. Sinister is always like, ooh, a new baby mama.
He is always... Okay, so Mr. Sinister...
I like Mr. Sinister.
I know you do. I'm mixed on him, but if there is a character who's getting genetically manipulated and belongs on an X team and it isn't being done by Stryker, it's Mr. Sinister.
Stryker really isn't in the comic books that much.
Or Lady Sinister. No, but he's often like a background figure. You know, like basically if you're not Wolverine and you're getting genetically manipulated, it's by Mr. Sinister.
Determined to stop Strife, Cable broke into the Canadian Department K to learn about Strife's whereabouts, where he battled there Wolverine and Bishop.
Yeah.
After deciding to work together, Cable teleported the trio to the Grey Malkin, where they deduced that Strife was on Apocalypse's old moon base. Remember that?
Yep.
After being told to return to the X-Mansion, the trio decided to go on ahead and battle the Mutant Liberation Front soldiers and the Dark Riders, who are Apocalypse's main minions. The trio was then joined by a small group of X-Men, X-Factor, X-Force, and soon they Cannonball berated Cable for leaving X-Force and doing this whole thing on himself. They went to the moon to go after Strife, and they encounter an energy barrier that only Cable and Havoc can enter. And inside the barrier, Strife explained to Cable that the reason they look so similar was because Cable was a clone of Strife.
Dun, 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 dun,
And Strife was the son of Scott and Jean. And then Cable and Strife had a climactic battle on the moon, and Cable created a machine from various pieces of his cybernetic arm, which Cyclops activated, sucking Cable and Strife into a time vortex to which they disappeared. Now, this scene also has this event has a scene where Cable's body gets blasted and most of his synthetic skin comes off, revealing basically that half of his body is metal, and it shows the full ravages of how far the techno-organic virus has gone into his body, because if you don't know this, and I haven't explained this so far, Cable, the only thing holding that virus from not taking over his entire body is his telekinesis. So he genetically, he's so powerful that at the molecular level, he holds back the virus as much as he can. And it's kind of
so he's never relaxed. He can never. Yes, he can never truly.
It's also the reason I should explain this before. It's the reason why he uses a gun. Because if he uses his powers,
he can't
stop the virus.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that's the reason why you see him all bulked up with all the guns and stuff like that. And every once in a while he'll use his powers, but every time he does, like the virus takes over a little bit more.
That's his version of adamantium poisoning.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. It's exactly right. This will also start off the storyline because up to this point, you didn't know that, Cable... You didn't know who was the clone and who wasn't the clone. And for a couple of years now, they let you believe that Cable was the clone and the Strife was like the real deal.
Interesting.
So anyways, Cable is eventually able to return to modern day, and soon Cable learns the truth. At the gravesite of Madeline Pryor, Mr. Sinister reveals to Cable that he created her and that Cable is the original Nathan Summers. So now Cable knows that he's not the clone for sure, and doesn't get that dangling story thread hanging over him for the rest of the time. His father soon gets married, and Cable body slides into the danger room and runs holographic sequences that depict the day Cyclops sent Cable into the future. Cable is disgusted by the seeming lack of emotion on Cyclops' part, and Cyclops enters the danger room and tries to show Cable other video logs that depict how heartbroken he was to send his son into the future. And these are sort of like his captain's logs of his time on X Factor. This discussion is broken up by a fight with the Executioner, and the Summers men fight the intruder and defeat the Madman. And something about fighting together with the two of them sort of bonds them as leaders. Like they sort of see each other's leader styles. And Cable attends the wedding of Cyclops and Jean Grey because of this. And this is sort of like the first time where they kind of put their things aside, and that this old grumpy old man is just like, okay, Dad.
Okay, Dad, who's 20 years younger than me.
It should also be noted that during this time, Cyclops and Jean Grey's psyches are taken into the future during the honeymoon, where they raise Cable for 12 years. Like I said, that's the story I talked about before. Now, Ashley, I want to ask you, what do you think about the relationship between Cable and Cyclops? Because, again, Nathan, for the most part, doesn't know that his dad raised him in the future. And Cyclops' only encounters with this guy up to this point is this really old dude who's really gruff and uses a gun, is a mercenary, and is like, I'm your son.
I like the idea that it is a complicated relationship and that they're both bad at it. Scott is not the most emotionally mature or stable person.
Oh, no.
So it stands. Remember when he was like, oh, hey, you look and sound exactly like my ex-girlfriend. Let's get married. Me too.
And then the ex-girlfriend shows up and he's like, bye.
Yeah, bye.
I want original
go
spice.
You're right. So it fits the rule to me that Nate would not be maybe the most emotionally stable, particularly given his upbringing and what he went through. I'm not sure because I just don't know that much about Cable. I'm not sure if he ever learns that he was actually raised by his parents. Maybe not. I would like to see him learn that. I think that would be very interesting. But there is that trope about masculine characters where like they fight, they're arguing, and then they have to either come to physical blows or literally save each other's lives in order to understand each other, which I think is tired. But it was the 90s, so I guess it's fine.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to move, we're going to move ahead a little bit in X-Men history to a storyline called Legion Quest, which, yes, is related to the Legion and the David you see on TV. During Legion Quest, Cable is asked to use Legion's time signature and travel backwards in time to find Iceman, Storm, Bishop, and Psylocke lost in time. He does so with Xavier and Jean Grey acting as his anchors, and he makes contact with the confused X-Men. His trip is short, and he is soon brought back in the present, and as the Earth temporarily ends, turning the tides to the Age of Apocalypse, Cable spends time with those he cares for. He and Domino kiss for the first time, and Cyclops and Jean finally tell Cable that they are Slim and Red, the surrogate parents that raised them in the future. Cable reveals that he's always known that when he was...
Then why was he such a dick?
Well, when he was a teenager, he says that his mind powers pierced the veil and he realized that that was Scott, and that for all these years he didn't know how to talk to him about it, which I think
boys, you can have feelings. You can talk about your feelings. You're better.
No, I've seen too much death.
You're better
I've seen
for it.
So much death.
Please just talk about your feelings.
There, so many sock puppets have died on my watch. So many sock puppets.
I didn't know that. That actually sounds really lovely.
Yeah, I actually like that moment because, and it is a thing of like, that would be something hard to talk with your dad.
It would, it would be, but
especially that kind of how he grew up. My God. Also, again, I don't know how much it complicates your relationship with your dad. If your dad is 35 and you're 56,
right? I don't know. I don't know. I look forward to reporting back when I'm faced with this problem.
Yes, when your dad gets younger than you.
When I'm 56. Yeah.
When you're 56.
Are we going to talk about Strife ever again?
No.
Okay, then can I ask you, as a Cable fan and as a Nate fan, how do you feel about Strife?
I think Strife is really stupid.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you were like, yeah, Strife is cool, or if you were like, this guy sucks.
Strife for me only works in the future.
That's fair. Okay.
In the future, I think there's a cool idea. There's something really cool behind the idea that there's a Nate fighting for the good side and there's a Nate fighting for the bad side.
Yeah.
And I kind of like the idea, since Nate is so tied to Apocalypse, and Apocalypse is kind of like, you're my heir, although Apocalypse is more like, I'm going to suck your brain out and take over your body.
Yeah, it's a little creepier than that.
But I
suck your brain out and take your body.
I like the idea. I like the idea that there's a good Nate and a bad Nate.
Cool.
I really do like that idea. And the Strife idea of Nate is kind of the idea that Nate's a weapon, which is what Mr. Sinister wanted from the beginning. So I when you put Strife in modern day, I don't like him. It's the same thing like from this point on, for here, Tyler Dayspring, his son, is in the present day at this time. I don't want to talk about him because I think he's really dumb. Yeah.
Time travel gets real hinky, as we've seen by the fact that we don't have teenage X-Men.
Yes, and I think the X-Men have used time travel way much.
Yeah.
Way too much.
X-Writers should be embargoed on time travel for at least a decade.
So when the world actually doesn't end, because to them it just blinks and comes back and there's nothing happens, right?
Surprise, but we're going to cancel all the X books.
But for us readers, we have 4 months of like probably the best X-Men crossover story of all time.
Yeah.
So after this happens, Cable moves into the X-Force, into the X-Mansion, and he lives in the X-Mansion for the first time, the same time as Dad. And he encourages everyone to improve their powers, including himself, to try to stop future events like this from happening.
Oh, I like that. I also like to imagine him making macaroni art for Scott and just like leaving it at the store.
This is for you, Dad.
I love you, Dad.
This is when I saw the grenade explode that bus full of old ladies.
Is that what the taco shell is there in the middle?
Yes.
The bus?
That's her arm flying off.
Okay.
Dad. Okay.
Thanks.
That's what the ketchup's for.
Thanks.
Yeah. I've seen so much death, Dad. I've seen so much
You
death.
gotta talk to my buddy Logan. If you talk to my buddy Logan, he's seen a lot of death too. You guys might bond over
I
that.
don't like Logan. And actually, in comic book continuity, I don't like Logan.
Oh, good. I don't like him either.
No. He kills my son, Tyler Dayspring. Actually.
Oh, does he?
Yeah,
My grandson?
Yes.
Oh, we should kill him.
Yeah, I've seen so much death.
Yeah.
I would kill him, but I've seen so much death.
Okay. Well, what's
My
one?
Cable voice has changed quite a bit,
What's
actually,
one more?
too.
It's pretty close to your Punisher voice, actually.
So, also during this time, Nate begins to use telepathy more.
Cool.
And try to see if he can expand his powers without letting the virus take him over too much. And then, Ashley,
Yeah.
he meets another clone, or let's say an alternate from an alternate universe, the X-Men.
Oh, yeah, I knew it because you were excited and you didn't. If you had sounded exasperated, I'd have been like, "Who the hell is this other Cable clone?" All right, tell me about your ex-boyfriend.
So a being named Nate Gray makes the jump from Age of Apocalypse reality and immediately affects the psionic plane in the 616 universe, because remember, this is a Cable with no techno-organic virus. He's Nate Gray, the most powerful mutant on the Earth. He comes into our reality and he almost blows up the astral plane.
Great.
So telepaths,
The Summer Children are the worst.
telepaths everywhere in the Marvel Universe are unable to use their powers properly for several days after this.
Okay.
Cable, along with his buddy Blacksmith, tracks the anomaly to Cable's safe house in Switzerland. The men find that Nate Gray is an exact replica of Cable, and their being so close in proximity causes a massive psionic backlash to each other.
They're like magnets.
Due to this, they are. Due to this misunderstanding, Nate Gray attacks Cable because he saw that backlash as an attack.
Yeah.
And Cable sees what his power would be like if he was unchecked by the TO virus. Nate Gray basically kicks Cable's ass. But Cable, because of his military strategery, is able to...
That's not a word.
Yes, it is. He's able to, basically push Nate Gray too far, and it basically overwhelms him. And Cable goes inside Nate Gray's mind and basically, shuts him down.
It's the Batman Superman argument.
And so they sort of become loose allies after this.
Okay.
Although most of the time, Cable just calls him boy.
Oh, dear.
Which Nate does not like.
Yeah.
Again, this is the same dude.
Because Nate's also significantly younger than him as well, right?
Nate is like 18.
Yeah.
And Cable, in my head, Cable...
152.
Well, Cable, somewhere in my head, he's close to 60. Like, he's up there. I want old Cable. The Cable's not in his 40s, Josh Brolin. Cable's an old man.
Would you have accepted Stephen Lang as Cable?
Yes.
Okay.
100%. I actually wanted John Hamm as Cable, interestingly enough.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So after this time, Cable experienced a marked increase in his telekinetic abilities because of his action, with the idea that maybe X-Man opened up some of the abilities that he has shut off because of the techno-organic virus. But because of this, Cable wasn't quite ready with the balance of using his powers more and more and more, that the techno-organic virus began taking over more and more and more of his body. Now, I'm going to let you know, there is a comic book because...
Fun fact, Josh Brolin is not in his 40s.
Yep. There is a comic book where this is the start of Onslaught. And during the Onslaught thing, Sue Richards teams up with Cable. And Cable at this time has lost his arm, half his body, and half his face to the techno-organic virus. They're completely metal. And at certain times, Sue Richards has to help hold the techno-organic parts of his body from taking over the body.
Powerful.
Because she's really cool. So as a result of the entity known as Onslaught hampering all psionic ability, Cable basically succumbed completely to the techno-organic virus. But he was healed by the assistance of young Franklin Richards.
Hey, we like him.
Now, Ashley, real quick, just in case anybody doesn't know, who is Onslaught?
He's evil Professor X with a giant red suit.
That's right. That is exactly right.
He's very silly, but also very cool.
He's such a cool design. And Franklin Richards, of course, is the son of Reed Richards and Sue Richards.
And
which is
maybe the most powerful being
in the Marvel Universe. Yep. Yeah. So I think it's kind of nice that young Franklin Richards heals Cable. I think it's kind of cool. Now, he doesn't cure the TechnoOrganic virus completely, but he puts it back to where it was.
I think it's interesting that you have these two sons of arguably two of the most important couples in the Marvel Universe helping each other out. I think that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And soon Cable would gain the scimitar. Remember that psionic weapon that we talked about from the future? Realizing the culmination of his destiny was near, Cable soon asked a reporter named Irene to chronicle his life. His life. Soon after, Cable learned that he was one of the 12 mutants that are supposedly destined to usher in a golden age for mutant kind. But Apocalypse intended to use the 12 to boost his powers to allow him to alter reality to create an age of Apocalypse, and also to use them to enter a new host body. Remember in the future how Apocalypse was like, man, this Strife body looks a lot like Cable. Man, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
If only there was a younger Cable-like body that was in the Marvel Universe that didn't have the TechnoOrganic virus. I wonder whose body Apocalypse would use.
Franklin Richards.
No, the X-Man. Yeah, the X-Man, of course. At the last moment, Cyclops sacrificed himself to stop Apocalypse and the transfer. And because of this, Cable joined the X-Men to honor his memory. Now, this is also the period of time where the X-Men have really stupid costumes, but Cable gets a new costume where his mask covers up one of his eyes in the idea of making him a Cyclops.
Yeah. It's really cool, actually.
Which is kind of, yeah, Cable on the X-Men is very interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting.
Soon, Cable learns that Cyclops is alive, and Cable and Jean track him down to Egypt, and Jean forcibly removes Apocalypse's essence from Cyclops' body, allowing Cable to seemingly destroy Apocalypse forever.
Woo,
and now
comics.
His purpose as a character is over. Ashley, if Apocalypse is dead, is that the end of Cable's story? Like, do no more Cable stories, basically?
No.
Well, how do you feel about this?
Oh, I mean, yes, you should. I think
like Cable should just have a finite ending done.
It's tough. If that character is going away forever, then maybe the hero who led the fight against them and that was their soul-driven purpose should go away forever as well. That's not what's happened because Apocalypse will come back because it's comics.
Yes.
And I do believe that a great writer can give any character a great story. And I think Cable is interesting enough. But I don't necessarily know if I don't think that it's not, that's probably too many negatives. I think it's time for Cable to go back to the future. And I would like to see.
Kind of like a Terminator kind of thing?
I guess. I don't know what that means.
Like the Terminator films, like where there's the future where the Terminators control the future and, you know, there's like Kyle Reese is leading the charge and
yeah, but he should go back like to his time and he should see what the world is like and he should have to deal with those concepts. Like I think that would be more interesting to explore than keeping him in the 616. Marvel and the X-Men in particular have a bad habit of keeping time travelers around too long.
Yeah.
And I would like to see what a Cable story set in an alternate future would be like.
I kind of agree with you. I would like Cable to go back to his future because I think his storyline in the present day is done.
I agree.
And I think you could do a storyline. I think you could do like the classic storyline where he goes back to the future and everything's different now.
Absolutely.
And so how does he deal with that?
And he, you know, if he's
things aren't the way he remembers,
as good of a strategist as he seems to be, then he would know that. And he should have prepared and run scenarios, but then what he faces is obviously not something that he considered before.
His wife doesn't love him. His wife has no idea who he is. And now there's a new enemy. And where did this enemy come from? And we don't know how to fight this.
Also, if you bring back his son, then you have an opportunity for them to rebuild their relationship like we saw Cable and Cyclops do. And maybe rehab that character a little bit.
Yeah. Now, after this, for a time, Cable had nearly limitless control over his powers, but he knew the toll wielding such energy would have on his body, so he tried to make a difference while he still could. He wanted to give people a taste of what peace could be like, so he used his powers to pull sunken pieces of his space station Providence out of the ocean, and he rebuilt it as a flying sanctuary, inviting some of the world's greatest minds and anyone else to start anew. And in a series of interviews with his friend Irene Mayweather, remember her, he revealed that he spent 4 days rerouting the waterways to flood the Sahara, and all kinds of goodwill effects. Now, all these events happen in a series called Soldier X. Now, they renamed it that time because at the time Marvel didn't want to pay royalties to Rob Liefeld for the name Cable.
Yeah.
Deadpool was called like something, I can't even remember, like a completely different name.
Something like Weapon X, but not.
Agent X or something like that.
I think it was Agent
But
X.
Soldier X is actually a pretty interesting title that's like kind of takes place out of a weird out of continuity Cable story, but it's worth the read.
Cool.
Then House of M happened, Ashley. What's that?
Scarlet Witch says no more mutants, and a bunch of people live in an alternate reality for a while, and then we all come back.
But basically, there's only 198 mutants left in the world.
Until there's not, yes.
But soon after that, during a storyline called Messiah Complex, a new baby mutant is born on Earth. And Cable and the X-Men proclaim the new mutant baby to be the future savior of mutant and mankind alike. Cable decides the new mutant baby should be protected at all costs and fights for it, and after many events and battles, the baby ends up in Cable's hand. And Cable time travels in order to protect the baby. And when Cable attempts to enter a diner, he is attacked by Bishop, another time traveler, who apparently tracked him down and wants to kill the baby because he believes the baby will bring doom to mutants in the future. When Nathan is about to escape with Hope, the baby savior, he's stopped by his father, Cyclops. Cable reasons with him that the baby will not be safe in the present and that she could grow up to be the mutant savior by letting her grow up in the future, just like he did.
Can I tell you something? This is where most of my Cable knowledge comes from.
Okay.
I love Cable with a baby.
Sure. Seeing that Cable may have a point, Cyclops lets his son escape to the time portal, and when that happens, Cable is in the future. After the events of Messiah Complex, Cable and the baby have traveled to an alternate future for the safety of the baby. They were followed by Bishop, who is hell-bent on killing that baby. But eventually, when Hope reaches her late teens, she and Cable time jump from the future back to the Xavier Institute, discovering for the first time that it has been destroyed and that the X-Men have moved to San Francisco.
What?
Yep. It is at this time that Bastion hopes to kill Hope and the rest of the mutant kind. Now, Bastion is a 90s X-Men character that is sort of an advanced Sentinel. Bastion seals Utopia and most of San Francisco in an almost impenetrable energy barrier. Cyclops rallies the mutants to fight for their very existence, and he sends Cable, X-Force, and Doug Ramsey forward in time to shut down the Nimrod production line and disable the Nimrod Sentinels at their source. Cable agrees, using the last time jump available to take himself and the rest of his team forward in time. It's a one-way trip. Once there, Cable and X-Force manage to weather the anti-mutant forces. However, they discover that the only time gate available to go back to their time cannot be opened by organic beings, and it's closing rapidly. Making one final sacrifice, Cable shuts off his telekinesis, allowing the TechnoOrganic Virus to completely take over his body. Now an inorganic being, he's able to open the time portal, allowing the rest of his team to pass back through time. As he holds the time gate open, he sees Hope one final time, and she begs him. She says, "Daddy, please come back to me." And he smiles at the girl who he knows is his daughter, and he succumbs to the effects of the TechnoOrganic Virus, turns into metallic fragments, and crashes to the ground. Hope's mutant powers are released for the very first time over the anger of Cable's death, and she uses them to destroy Bastion and break the shield surrounding San Francisco. And that's the end of Cable.
Bye.
Actually, no, it's not.
Of course it's not.
Ashley, real quick, what do you think about the idea of Hope? You talked about that you like that Cable with a baby is really cool.
I love Cable with baby.
Yeah, Cable time traveling with the baby is a really fun series.
Yeah.
What do you think about giving a baby to the gruffest character in the X-Men universe?
It's the best. It's why
I've seen so much death.
It's why Logan works.
I've seen so much death.
Because
baby.
Remember when I talked earlier about how it's okay for guys to have feelings and emotions?
Yeah.
You do, because you're humans. So it's always interesting to see these characters that are tough and closed off have to deal with something that needs them, but also needs nothing from them. And I always think that that's very compelling. I was a daddy's girl, so it speaks directly to my heart.
Okay.
And this was like I was aware of who Cable was when I first went back and I read this, and it's just very sweet. And I think it's one of Cable's best things. Like, if you like him as an action hero, that's totally great, that's totally valid. But for me, like, this validates that not only is he a cool character, but he's a good man. And I believe that about Scott Summers. I believe Scott Summers is a good man. So I like that is carried over onto Nate.
Sure. Eventually, an almost fully metallic Cable returns to the present. How? They never explain.
Comics!
And soon after in Utopia, Hope, channeling the power of the Phoenix, is not only able to purge Cable from the techno-virus forever, but able to heal his injuries.
Yeah, because every subsequent Summers Gray offshoot is more powerful than the one that came before.
Cable warns Cyclops that the war with the Avengers is coming, and then that event happens. Cable loses his eye, he gets it back, and after Secret Wars, Cable has traveled back from the future to take back Charles Xavier's brain from the Red Skull, and he's enjoying the Uncanny Avengers. He doesn't like Captain America a lot, and that's basically where we're going to leave it for now, because Cable has a current solo series that's actually pretty good, and Dupe shows up in it, so that's why a double reason to read it. So before we get to recommended reading real quick, let's talk about this. Hey, super friends, you like sleep, right? I like sleep. You like sleep. We all like to sleep, and I especially like to sleep on my Lisa mattress. It's a mattress that is redesigned to spring you into a better sleep. Now, Lisa is one of my favorite sponsors because when they started sponsoring Geek History Lesson, they sent us a mattress in a really super awesome compressed box. It arrived on my door. I got to have the fun of watching this mattress spring into life, and I've been comfortably sleeping on it every single night. That is no lie. Now, Lisa is currently offering our listeners $125 off at lisa.com/geekhistory. Now, Lisa is spelled Leesa, and that is the deepest discount that Lisa has ever offer. Now, they have 11,000 plus 5-star reviews everywhere online, and the Lisa mattress is loved by over 300,000 happy sleepers and counting, and you can count me as one of those 300,000. No lie, Lisa's one of my favorite sponsors. Go get their mattress. Lisa.com/geekhistory. You can get $125 off. And you know what? You get like 100 nights to test it out. You get 100 sleeps. So if you don't like it, you can send it back. Lisa.com/geekhistory. All right, Ashley, let's get to recommended reading. What is that?
Well, if you head on over to geekhistorylesson.com/recommended reading, Professor Jason is going to recommend a bunch of stuff that you can get your hands on and read if you want to learn more about Cable. There's a cool little widget. You click on it, you buy the book, a little bit of support comes back our way, and you expand your mind. Again, that's geekhistorylesson.com/recommended reading. Our whole catalog is there, so go check it out, get yourself something good, and then tweet at us and let us know if you liked it and if this Cable stuff tickled you.
Okay, my first choice is Cable: The Last Hope. It is a new collection. It collects like the first, I believe, 10 to 15 issues of the Cable series where he's holding hope and he's running through time.
Yes.
And Bishop Gresham. It is my favorite Cable book. It's really good. Duane Sorinsky is, I believe, the writer. But it's kind of the perfect story for Cable. It's him traveling through time, hopping through multiple time periods, protecting this baby, and Bishop being the other X-Men character traveling through time, hopping through as well, which is really a lot of fun. My second choice is X-Men: The Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix. That is the story where Cyclops and Phoenix get their psyches taken to the future and they raise Nathan. It's a really great story. It's drawn by Gene Ha, and it's a teenager Cable. It's a lot of fun, and you get to see Gene and Cyclops be good parents. And then lastly, it's Cable and X-Force Classic Volume 1. Basically, if you're just looking for when Cable showed up, when he was grimacing, when he was with the six-pack, when he had so many shoulder pads that it like just slaps you in the face, that's the book that you want to read. Now, Ashley, I want to talk with you a little bit more about Cable, and I just kind of want to ask you a final little question here.
Okay.
So Cable, he's very much a 90s character. We've talked about this. Do you think Cable has been now, because we're 20 years past the 90s now, do you think Cable has been redeemed beyond his 90s grimness? Like, do you think that he has done enough stuff now that, especially like with the Hope series, that was in the late 2000s? Has there been enough good Cable stories to pull him out of the 90s grimness character, or is he just always forever going to be trapped as that 90s character?
I don't know if he'll ever escape that. It's very inherent in just the visual of the character. He looks like an epitome of that time, in a way that a lot of Image Comics characters do.
Sure.
Or a character. a character like Azrael from the Batman universe. Even when you give him an updated costume, he always feels of a piece with that. I do think there are great stories with Cable, particularly the Hope stuff, beyond the 90s series. Marvel keeps bringing him out of the toy chest every 5 or 10 years or so.
Well, there's a Cable ongoing series publishing right now.
Right. So he shows up enough that I think if that's something that's keeping people from wanting to check out this character, or if that's something that maybe doesn't appeal to readers, I think there's enough good stuff with this character, but I don't think he'll ever escape the 90s of it all.
I also think the movie's going to give him a resurgence.
Definitely. And I mean, that's the reason why he's got a solo series right now.
Yep.
Let's be completely honest.
100%. Oh, and we'll see the relaunch of another Cable and Deadpool series, or Deadpool and Cable, very soon.
Yeah, and Domino will probably be there too.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, film tends to do that for characters.
Okay. All right, let's go into the teaching tweet.
Where in 140 characters or less, Professor Jason is going to break down everything he just taught you about Cable. To see this tweet and a whole bunch of the previous ones, head on over to twitter.com/GHL podcast.
Cable, the man lost through time, whose cool, glowing eye will save them all, if you can never stop grimacing to do it. Who loves shoulder pads? All right, let's move straight into the honor roll. Ashley, what is the honor roll?
Well, Jason, if any of our Mind University students head on over to the old iTunes and they leave us a 5-star review and they write something, we'll read it and we will welcome them into the Teacher's Lounge where we have bagels and coffee.
Yes, and it also helps people find our podcast on iTunes. The first member of the honor roll, inducted in the honor roll today, is Kalea99, who says, I'm not much of a comic book fan, but really enjoy this podcast. It's consistently informative and funny, and I always look forward to the next episode. Well, welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome. We've opened the door, and here's your key. The next joining of the honor roll goes to Kayla Boyette, who says, Jason and Ashley never disappoint. Name a comic book character, and they've probably done a podcast over them. And if they haven't, you can suggest it. I listen to this podcast all the time and have learned so much from it. Thanks for always being informative and fun. Well, thank you, Kayla, and thank you for the review. And the last member of the honor roll this week goes to JetsFan28, who says, Ashley and Jason are great. And this is one of the first podcasts that I ever listened to. It's an amazing way to learn about characters I may not have the time or money to read about on my own. So Kalia99, Kayla Boyette, and JetsFan28, welcome to the GHL Runner Roll. If you want to be like them, go over to iTunes, leave us a 5-star review. While you're over there, you can also subscribe to us on iTunes. You can listen on Stitcher. You can listen on Spotify. You can listen on iHeartRadio. All of those places, download and subscribe as well. Also, you can go over to patreon.com/Jawiin. That's Jawiin. That is the main thing that keeps this podcast free for all of you and all the awesome patrons over there. We thank them for their support. You can go over there and join them. You can join the Hall of Justice we have over there. You can listen to lots of extra podcasts, including Geek History Lesson Extra. This week's Geek History Lesson Extra will be, should the X-Men comics have time travel in them?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, that's going to be a big thing. So that's what we're going to talk about over there. And if you go over to patreon.com/Jawiin, that's Jawiin, you help support the show and you help make sure that this podcast stays around. Ashley, if they want to suggest future episodes like Cable, just like these awesome students at Flash Spider-Man, Steve Irby, Cameron from New Brunswick at Smoothie Gamer, and the amazing comic book artist Patrick Zurcher, where can they do that?
If you want to suggest other lessons, you can do that at geekhistorylesson.com, facebook.com/geekhistorylesson, and again on Twitter at GHL Podcast. There's a bunch of ways to contact us respectfully in all of these places.
And before we leave, we're going to come down to a hashtag stick around, where we talk a little bit at the very end, just so you guys stay through all our announcements and stuff like that. Ashley, I'm very curious. I don't think you're going to have an answer for this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you have a favorite Cable costume? What's your favorite look for him? He's had a lot of looks.
Has he,
Yes,
though?
yes, he has.
In my brain, he's always in like a black shirt and cargo pants.
I don't think that's any of his costumes.
I think I like, even though it's from an era of bad X-Men costumes, I like where he's got the one eye covered. I think that's a very cool look.
After Cyclops' death.
Yeah.
And he has the scimitar and...
I'm convinced that that's what inspired the red X over Cyclops' face.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That was like partially part of that costume, the idea behind that costume design. That's interesting. Is there one that comes to mind for you?
100%. It is when it's around Legion Quest. It's around Age of Apocalypse. When he moved into the X-Mansion, the X-Men sort of have that default uniform that's blue and yellow. Mm-hmm. Well, he sort of got this blue and yellow overalls thing.
Oh, yes. That's a good look.
And it's kind of like Jim Lee's Cyclops costume because he gets 2 X emblems on each of his man boobies. And then... So it kind of comes over as overalls. But I like that because to me, I was like, oh, that's him accepting the X-Men. But also, it's him looking like his dad.
Yeah, I mean, if you put a Baby Bjorn over top of any of his costumes, I'm pretty into it.
Yeah, that's the one, like, it's mainly blue, and then he sort of has this, like, shoulder pad thing that comes to an X in the front, and then Hope's in the front of it.
Yeah, I like that.
So he's actually had a lot of... I dislike... the original Rob Liefeld costume.
So do I.
I think it looks so bad.
It's just dated.
Yeah.
I think it's very telling about Cable as a human being that he wears the baby carrier in his front where he can see her instead of on his back. Mm-hmm. I think that's interesting.
Also, because, maybe that baby will stop that bullet.
Oh, Jesus.
I've seen so much death.
Christ.
I've seen so much death. I've seen so much death. One time I was walking around this ancient mausoleum called Target. And inside that ancient mausoleum, I saw...
an action figure of you?
No. There were all these people with their heads blown off. And they'd been dead so long that they had white skin. And they felt plastic to the touch. And there were hundreds of them.
Hey, Cable.
What?
You seem like kind of a high-strung dude. Where do you fall down on coffee? You a coffee drinker?
What is coffee?
You go to a Starbucks?
What is Starbucks?
They had one in the mausoleum. I'm sure they did.
I don't think so. Okay. We don't have time for your 21st century luxuries.
You gotta order
like coffee.
Your coffee in arbitrary Italian sizes.
You know what we have to drink in the future?
Blood?
Muck. Yeah.
Is that like coffee?
You scoop up a little cup of dirt and mud.
That's kind of what coffee tastes like.
You take a drink, and sometimes if you're lucky, a little blood flavor comes in.
We're not all blessed with a TechnoOrganic Virus where we can stomach such things.
Well, yeah, I can do that. I can eat anything. I sometimes eat screws.
Jesus.
Yeah.
How about a light bulb?
Huh?
Light bulb?
I don't know. We don't have light bulbs in the future. You think we have light in the future? Oh,
I almost swore at
you hoity-toity privileged 21st century ladies.
I'm sorry.
With your light bulbs.
I'm sorry, Cable. I'll check my privilege.
Look, I come from 2,000 years in the future.
Do you? Are you that far in the future?
2,000 years in the future.
Wow.
I'm lucky if I find food.
You're lucky that the planet still exists, my friend.
I mean, that too. That too.
That it's just not burned to ash.
I don't know. My Cable voice keeps changing. I don't care.
That's cool. I'm here for it.
It's all the multiple eras of Cable. All right, I think that's it. I am Jason Cable Through Time Inman.
I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson. And Professor Jason, would you please dismiss the class?
Class is dismissed before there's so much death.